in a very short amount of time. And it's playing a role in their success. So scalability, when you have lots of users coming in, public cloud, very good fit. Elasticity. Here's a look at traffic on Amazon.com, a retail website. Towards the end of November, festivals, buying season, huge traffic. Before that, not much. If Amazon.com would have had to have enough infrastructure to cover this peak and some buffer. For here, very good, but here, waste, right? They turned off their last physical server in 2010, moved everything to Amazon Web Services, because on Amazon Web Services, the infrastructure follows the demand. Here's another example. This company, Animoto, invented an application which creates a video out of your Facebook posts and pictures and videos. They were running 40 machines, and then suddenly they launched a Facebook widget which went viral. Huge number of users started coming in. They could have lost that opportunity if they were not able to scale. But because they were on AWS, they were able to scale. In over 3 days, they went from 40 machines to 5,000 machines. And then they came right back down. They did not lose users. That's the benefit of elasticity. Not just elasticity, you may be worried about availability. Your site has to run 24/7 today because a customer can pop in anytime from any part of the globe, right? Who benefits from the availability of AWS? Well, Shaw Media. They say AWS allowed them to implement a DR strategy at a fraction of the cost at what they would have incurred. They did not have a disaster recovery plan before because it was way too expensive to set up a second data center. On AWS, you get it for free. They used to experience 10 to 20 hours of downtime a month. After AWS, it has reduced without them having to change anything. There are several services, infrastructure, services, and architecture, which comes together to give you this kind of availability. And you are free to utilize, mix and match, whatever is useful. Here's a mobile-specific example, Flipboard, tablet application. They've been running their infrastructure on AWS from day one. Their service runs 100% on AWS in multiple availability zones, and they chose it because they did not want to invest time and effort and capital expenditure in a data center. And they like the flexibility. Those services that I mentioned, they're utilizing those services in various ways to increase their availability. If you have an online presence, how fast the page loads impacts directly how much commerce you're going to do and what the user's impression of your brand is. So low latency is very important. And that's where our content distribution network comes into picture. You may have your website here or your servers here or servers here, but your users may be anywhere across the globe. You can use the content distribution network working out of these 40 plus edge locations today to be near your customer. If your customer is in India, he'll get the content from the nearest edge location. If your customers are in US or if somebody is casually browsing, they're going to get a great experience because there's an edge location near them. So you can leverage this. Yeah? You can go global. How it works, the first time somebody wants to load your page, it goes all the way back to the server, it's loaded, and it's kept close to that edge location. The next time somebody comes in, it gets served out of that edge location, so it's much faster. Who benefits? Here's a company. They say Earth Networks is distributing weather information to millions of users in near real time. They use this content distribution network, save 50% in cost, and not only that, they're able to reduce the cost back on the server. What more do you want from your infrastructure? And this is a part which is very dear to me and a part which we have been discussing earlier. Mass customization requires you to know your user, collect data about that user. You have a lot of data, who purchased what, when, and then you need to analyze the data. How do you analyze that much data? You have data coming from your CRM. You have data coming from your ERP. Data sitting already in your databases. You may be investing in a data warehouse. You may be pulling data from third parties, Facebook, Twitter, wherever. Your web servers are logging every time somebody visits. And we are talking about mobile applications. What is the user doing there? How much time are they spending on which page and which screen or which product? All the data is coming in. The challenge is to make sense of it. The volume of data the variety of that data is so vast that traditional ways of analyzing data are breaking down. You cannot anymore put all of that data in a database and use a traditional application. You cannot use Excel to analyze that data. People are looking to innovative solutions and technology to analyze this vast amount of data. One of them is Hadoop, which is an implementation of a MapReduce paradigm, parallel processing of data. It's quite complicated to set up a Hadoop cluster. And first, you have to become an expert in setting up that cluster. Second, you have to buy all that infrastructure to run Hadoop, do all that parallel processing. On Amazon Web Services, that amount of effort is reduced significantly because you can launch a Hadoop cluster at the click of a button, right? So you can launch clusters. You can try out various ideas. If those ideas don't seem very good, you can throw it away. You're not stuck with the bill of a massive cluster. You can run a cluster, try out an idea for 1 hour, 2 hours, throw it away, try something else. You can keep experimenting. You're not stuck with a big bill, right? And once you have found your idea, you can continue to run it for low cost. Another way of analyzing big data is to use a data warehouse. You may be familiar with some of these names here. These companies and products are software that allow you to analyze your data, right? But they need a fast database, a data warehouse to work on. If you're investigating data warehouses, you will know that traditional databases don't work very well when the amount of data becomes very large or requires significantly expensive hardware. Then there are non-traditional databases. They work very well, Teradata, Netezza, Greenplum, Vertica, but they're extremely costly. Could you start experimenting with data warehouse without having to invest in extremely costly hardware or extremely costly software license? Yes, you can. You can use Amazon Redshift. That is data warehouse as a service. So, and it works with all the standard popular business intelligence software already. So you can take all the data that we talked about earlier, and you can pump it, all of that, into Redshift. This thing is designed to work at petabyte scale. So terabytes is just nothing for it. So you can put all of your data in there, and you can analyze all of your data in real time or near real time. Right? That is the tool that will give you insights into what the customer is doing. That is the tool you need to figure out that this person will run out of toothpaste in 7 days, so I can send him a reminder. You need big data tools to get that kind of intelligence. Here's an example. Netflix, the online movie streaming company, they have millions of users streaming movies online. An analyst in Netflix wanted to try this. He wanted to know who are all the users who have viewed this scene from a movie last year, so that he can recommend a different but similar movie to them, right? If you do it on traditional hardware, that's it. You'll have a traffic jam, right? Nothing is going to move. You need big data tools to be able to do this kind of thing, and Netflix are using Hadoop and data warehouses to great effect. That's what they use to do all those recommendations. Here's another example, Airbnb. It's an online website where folks can rent rooms and apartments for a short period of time. They do a lot of analysis. They say how many cities, how many countries, who's doing what, how many nights booked, how many, when, right? They need big data tools to analyze, do the number crunching for all the data that is coming in, for all the transactions that are being put, right? So they use some of these tools. They benefit from Elastic, MapReduce, and Redshift. In summary, what are the benefits of cloud computing? No more CapEx. Convert your CapEx into pay-as-you-go variable expenditures. Those variable expenditures are lower on the cloud simply because of the economies of scale. Also, because it's the cloud, you can get infrastructure quickly when you need it and release it when you don't need it. So your capacity, your infrastructure is elastic. It can stretch, and it stretches back. You're not saddled with a lot of servers when you don't need them. Because it takes only minutes instead of days or weeks to get machines and compute capacity, your time to market reduces significantly. And you can experiment more. You can try out more things. You can do more innovation. Also, because you don't have to worry about storage and backups and DNS and networking and power and cooling and buildings and security of that building, you can focus on your business. You can take your business, here's my business, here's a problem I see, can I develop something to solve this problem? And you can get the infrastructure to support it in minutes. And you can go global. So wherever your customers are, you get the same infrastructure everywhere. You don't have to worry about setting up another data center somewhere else and negotiating for them. With that, I'll conclude my presentation, and I'll open the floor to questions. Any questions about Amazon Web Services or how it can help you? Right, so I'm here, and my colleagues from Amazon are also here. So feel free to reach out to us, ask your questions, share your doubts, issues, concerns, right? We are here to help you.
As we promised that we'll have the use cases right at the end. We basically have two of the very interesting use cases in the tablet commerce arena, which is Big Bazaar Direct and Gitanjali. So we have both the people joining us. The way we want to conduct this session is that I will take the lead on potentially asking them questions on the business side of it, and he will take the discussion more on the scalability side from a technology perspective, and that's how we'll take the discussion forward. I'd like to invite Nishant. Nishant leads the e-commerce business for Gitanjali. He's the VP for e-commerce for Gitanjali. Nishant, please have a seat. And I would also like to invite Mr. Samsung Samuel. He's the CEO of Big Bazaar Direct and the man behind this entire concept. Please, Samsung, have a seat. Can we share the mic? I'll make sure that there are 10 minutes surely available for you to question him, and he's authorized to answer whatever he thinks is right. And same with Nishant, because I think each of these businesses are work in progress, so there may be some areas which they may not like to respond about. I think I would like to open the floor by asking first Samsung, then Nishant about what do you think? What's the need of Big Bazaar Direct? What's the vision? What's the thought? And how has been the journey till now? And then we take the same question to Nishant.
So the need is for any retailer to be able to penetrate to places where they don't work, or even if they were to put up a brick and mortar store, not every consumer in that area goes and shops in these stores. As well as brick and mortar is a pretty capital intensive business. The ROIs are pretty low. So this is part of a larger omni-channel strategy. The way we have gone ahead with tablet commerce is not the only way to do omni-channel. We have taken a call on doing it first. There are multiple other options in front of us. So it's essentially to basically reach out to what we call as the 30 crores Indians that we reach now, to take it to 60 crores. And we are taking this as one of the channels.
So why tablet? What's the thought?
So why tablet? So having decided that, so this is part of our omni-channel strategy. Having decided we need to do something which is not .com, that we were clear. So the reasons and why we did it is essentially that we believe tier 2, tier 3 towns is not to say that where we have big bazaars we don't want to penetrate. There is enough opportunity there, but what we're largely targeting the tier 2, tier 3 towns where we believe that people would purchase based on trust. Trust-based selling, assisted selling is what we were focusing on. We believe that having somebody in your locality who you trust, and those are the people we are going after to hire as franchisees. So that's what I think is our thought process behind this model.
Nishant, same. How did Gitanjali thought of the business? How is it different? If you understand the Big Bazaar Direct business, I think if you explain the difference, the audience will have.
Yeah. So, same points, right? But the bigger problem for us is we're in a niche business. In jewelry, is still a niche business, whereas in Big Bazaar, just the variety of products available is far higher. So in jewelry, of course, we have the same problems. I think they're just a little more multiplied in terms of much higher costs of inventory. The distribution of customers for jewelry is far different than it is for Big Bazaar, I would say. In a certain square, in a certain radius, opening up a jewelry store, how many customers are really going to end up buying versus in a retail store, probably the penetration is higher and the density of customers is higher. So e-franchising actually was a very innovative model, I think, for jewelry or any niche business where customers seem to be distributed across geographies where opening a store or a physical presence may not make sense. Reaching them through the franchisee model enabled by mobile technologies like tablets or iPhones or whatever, right, is actually, how would I say, it's actually almost a no option. There is no way we're going to open up a jewelry store in every nook and corner of the country.
For the benefit of everybody, can you explain the concept? And I think yours is a hybrid model where you keep the inventory as well as the tablet is used. Apart from Big Bazaar Direct, which is only the tablet part.
Correct.
And there's no physical inventory.
So jewelry as a product also, every product for us is a non-standard product. It's unique, right? Same product, different weight in gold, different price. Designs are varied. We don't carry multiple SKUs of every product there is. So what happens there is, how do you show customers the variety that they are used to going to a store and seeing, right? So there is an individual person who you happen to know in your social circle who will give, a little bit of physical sort of, we make alloyed pieces, so we sort of don't keep the real inventory, but sort of look-alike products that we share with our franchisees who go also with a tablet or a phone, and they'll show a few samples and then sort of complement that by sharing the catalog eventually. And so between these two, I think Indian consumers are also learning how to buy jewelry online. I think they still haven't graduated to buying that. So some amount of touch and feel complemented with technology seems to work for us.
And with you, Nishant, you also run the .com version of all the brands and the